Welcome to the Secret Agenda channel. We are in the 9th month of the Ukraine-Russia war, and the Russian troops cannot breathe easily for a second in this process. The unbelievable counterattacks organized by the Ukrainian army achieve their goal without allowing the Russian army to take precautions. Putin's naval forces posed a great threat to the heroes of Ukraine since the war began. In particular, the Black Sea Fleet of the Russians acted as a bodyguard for the Crimea and its surroundings. But last week, a huge drone attack organized by the Ukrainian army, which turned this mission upside down, managed to increase the temperature of the Black Sea. The attack of the Ukrainian forces with a large drone army, a first in history so far, managed to damage the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The Ukrainian army managed to infiltrate the Russian safe harbor with at least 9 unmanned aerial vehicles and 7 submarine drones and detonate the 1 mine layer and the Makarov frigate, the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Now the Russians had nowhere to flee in the Black Sea. The Black Sea offensive of Ukraine, which started in August, still continues, and Russian warships cannot anchor comfortably even in their own ports. Russian warships also cannot pass through the straits and are completely cornered in this inland sea. This attack did not destroy any Russian ships, but the air and sea drone attack on Russia's Black Sea Fleet angered the Kremlin so much that the Russian administration briefly withdrew from an agreement to protect grain shipments from Ukraine. And in this process, the world's food supply chain was adversely affected by this decision taken by the Russians. However, the Russians could not be too insistent on this decision, and the Moscow administration took a step back by rejoining this agreement, only 4 days after it suspended its decision to join the secure Black Sea grain corridor. The Russian backlash eased fears of further cuts in grain exports from the main supplier, Ukraine, at a time when global food inflation was skyrocketing. President Vladimir Putin reserves Russia's right to halt the United Nations brokered agreement again, while UN Chief Antonio Guterres is pushing to persuade Moscow to extend the agreement beyond its scheduled end on November 19th. This policy of the Moscow administration and its leader Vladimir Putin actually shows how much they fear the danger of Ukraine in the Black Sea. This situation proves to us that the Black Sea has almost turned into black waters for the Russians. The Russian Navy used to sail quite comfortably in these waters. In Crimea and its environs, the Russians did not have much to worry about. But with the latest operations of the Ukrainian heroes, we have left behind the period when the Russians were comfortable in this region. Putin is planning many security measures, especially these days, in order not to lose his dominance in Crimea and its surroundings. To date, Russia has not taken such steps to protect the Black Sea Fleet, a force participating in the missile attacks of Ukraine. Russia lost its flagship Moscow in the attack. The Russian administration, which made the mistake of thinking that Crimea was as safe as Russia, could not escape this heavy defeat in Sevastopol due to its arrogance. As we mentioned, the massive Ukrainian drone attack in Sevastopol did not sink any Russian ships, but it was claimed that the new flagship of the Russian Navy, the Makarov, was damaged after this attack. The attacks of Ukrainian heroes on Crimea and its surroundings clearly indicate that the Black Sea is not safe for the Russians. Especially after the Ukrainian drone attack on Sevastopol, the Russian army and Moscow administration seem to be sitting on their toes for a long time, because right after this attack, the Moscow administration is very afraid of a possible Ukrainian attack in Crimea and its surroundings. In the Black Sea waters, the biggest power that will affect this war will undoubtedly be Turkey. Now let's examine together Turkey's views on the Black Sea in the Ukraine-Russian war. Ibrahim Kalin, spokesman for the Turkish presidency, said, "If Montreux had been interpreted differently, there would be warships in the Black Sea today." Turkish presidency spokesperson Ibrahim Kalin announced that Turkey's implementation of the Montreux Convention, right after the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, was a strategic decision beyond diplomacy. Kalin said, "Our president took a very clear stance on the Montreux Convention, and as a result of this stance, we kept the Black Sea out of the war." Presidential spokesman Kalin also commented on a number of issues, from the war in Ukraine to Turkey's ongoing efforts in the war, the energy crisis in Europe, and the arming of non-military islands in the Aegean Sea. Touching on Turkey's role as a mediator between the conflicting parties, Kalin said, "Our president's leadership diplomacy, the trust relationship he has established with the leaders, and Turkey's serious and consistent stance on these issues give confidence to all actors." So how will the Montreux Straits Convention, mentioned by Turkish presidential spokesman Kulin, affect the Black Sea leg of the Ukraine-Russia war? And what significance does this agreement have in this war? The 1936 Montreux Convention allows Turkey to cut off any ship transit between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean during the war. And also, under the 1936 Montreux Convention, Ankara has control over the straits and can restrict any flagship from civilian or military passage during war or when threatened. On warships, there are more restrictions. If Turkey is at war, Ankara has the right to do whatever it takes, including closing the straits. If other states are at war and Turkey is neutral, the straits are closed to those warring countries. In peacetime, the rules are a little bit more complicated. Turkey does not allow convention aircraft carriers, but the Montreux Convention does not mention ships designed for other purposes, and which can also carry aircraft. In this case, Ankara is the final decision-maker depending on the time of war and peace. Submarines are also not allowed to pass through the Turkish straits. However, the Black Sea states of Ukraine, Russia, Bulgaria, Romania, and Georgia can build submarines outside the Black Sea and pass them through the straits. And with sufficient notice, these vessels can be removed for maintenance from the Black Sea with the passage permit of the Turkish government. Çavuşoğlu stated that if Ankara decided that there was a war, it could ban the passage of ships from the Black Sea, and noted that Turkey was not part of any war. Çavuşoğlu stated, "But even if we ban it, the Russians have the right of way." During the negotiations, Russia had changed this article. Articles 19, 20, and 21 regulate them. There's also limited maritime availability provided for states other than the Black Sea. For example, they cannot continue reconnaissance operations or have a ship crossing greater than 10,000 tons. Ships of a country outside the Black Sea can never exceed a total of 30,000 tons, and in some cases, these ships may be allowed to stay in the region for more than 21 days. Warships of the Black Sea states larger than 15,000 tons could pass alone through the straits, accompanied by more than 2 destroyers, provided that sufficient notice was given in advance. All countries that want to send ships from outside the Black Sea have to inform Ankara 15 days in advance, and the Black Sea countries 8 days in advance. Before the Montreux Convention, Turkish straits were regulated by the 1923 Lausanne Convention, which laid down some rules on how military ships could use the straits. In 1936, the Soviet Union and Turkey met in Montreux, Switzerland, and agreed to return the straits to Turkish control, including the Dardanelles and the Sea of Marmara. But before this deal was accepted, there were 3 of the most important positions to balance. Turkey was between the USSR and England. Turkey wanted to rearm the region and gain as much control over the straits as possible. The USSR wanted unrestricted passage for the Black Sea Fleet to access the Mediterranean, and the British wanted some limitations on the USSR's influence in the Mediterranean. But in the end, this internationally valid Montreux Convention ended up as a compromise between these 3 issues. The Montreux Convention is an important international agreement ratified by Turkey, England, France, USSR, Bulgaria, Greece, Germany, Yugoslavia, and Japan. And Ukraine plays a critical role in the Russian war, especially at the moment. The Russians, who have already begun to lose their dominance in and around the Crimea, began to worry about the neutrality of Montreux. If the Ukrainian heroes continue to focus on Crimea and its surroundings, it will not be a surprise that all the ships of the Russian administration in the Black Sea will sink. To be notified of new videos, please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching us.